Senator Cash. We'll now go to question time. Senator Cash.
Thank you. And my question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said of the attack on the Adass synagogue in Melbourne, "Unfortunately, it is impossible to separate this reprehensible act from the extreme anti-Israeli position of the Labor government in Australia." Israel's Deputy Foreign Minister, Sharon Haskell, recently made a public statement regarding her meeting with Attorney-General Mark Dreyfus. She said, "I expect to Mr Dreyfus my disappointment with the shift in the Australian government's attitude towards Israel. I emphasised our deep concern regarding the shocking rise in anti-Semitism in Australia and the clearly ineffectual response from the Australian government. There is no doubt that this has been caused in part by the Australian government's ongoing campaign against Israel." Minister, when will you acknowledge that the anti-Semitism crisis in Australia has been fuelled by the Albanese government's consistent actions against Israel on the world stage?
Thank you, Senator Cash. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. Thank you to Senator Cash for her first question as Leader of the Opposition in the Senate. And I would make the point to Senator Cash that the position Australia has taken in the United Nations and elsewhere reflects the concern that so many in the international community had and have, reflects the position of countries like Canada, like the United Kingdom, like New Zealand, like Japan and like Korea. And I would presume that the Senator would not be asserting some of the political statements she has just made about the Australian government in relation to all of those governments. So I would make that point first. Secondly, I would say this. It isn't helpful to conflate Australian government concerns and Australian community concerns about the scale of loss of life in Gaza or UN votes with anti-Semitism. That is not helpful. That is not helpful. Australia, like many countries, has advocated for a ceasefire, and we've expressed our concerns about the dire humanitarian situation. We want peace and security for Israelis and Palestinians alike, and we've taken a principled position in relation to the conflict. I appreciate that some may not agree with that position, but it is a position of principle and it is a clear position. In relation to anti-Semitism, as I said earlier today, we have seen a devastating rise in anti-Semitism in Australia and across the world, and that is unacceptable. We, as a government, me personally as well, have condemned and rejected anti-Semitism wherever it occurs, including in relation to some of the slogans outside the Opera House. Acts of hate have no place in this country.
Senator Cash, first supplement.
Thank you, Minister. Over recent months we've seen a synagogue firebombed, the former home of a Jewish leader vandalised, synagogues sprayed with hateful symbols, and even a Jewish childcare centre attacked in the middle of the night. Jewish Australians do not feel safe in Australia. This is a terrible indictment on the Albanese government. Why won't you admit that your votes against Israel on the international stage are fuelling a culture of anti-Semitism in Australia?
Thank you, Senator Cash. Minister Wong.
Well, I again refer to my first answer, and we don't want the conflict brought here. We do not want the conflict brought here, and I have repeatedly said that. And we have repeatedly acted in a manner that is consistent with that principle. There is no place in Australia for the sort of anti-Semitism we have seen. There's no place in Australia for the sort of violence we've seen, the graffiti we've seen, the attacks that we've seen, including on a place of worship. And the point I have made over and over again, and it is consistent with a position I have expressed all my political life, in fact all my life, is that fundamental to who we are as Australians are values such as respect, acceptance and inclusion, and we should all advocate for them. And those of us on this side have always done so and will always do so.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Cash, second supplementary.
Thank you. Minister, will the Albanese Labor government commit that it will no longer support one-sided anti-Israel motions at the United Nations that fail to condemn Hamas or call for the release of the hostages?
Thank you, Senator Cash. Minister Wong.
We have consistently condemned Hamas. We have consistently called for the release of hostages, and in fact, that question demonstrates the sort of misinformation that those who wish to bring the conflict here engage in. Those who wish to bring the conflict here engage in. That is what that demonstrates. This government, on behalf of the Australian people, has consistently condemned Hamas, has been consistent in our call for hostages to be released. I would note that the person who is out of touch with the international community is Mr Dutton, because Mr Dutton opposed a ceasefire. That ceasefire was supported by President Biden and President Trump. I'm sorry, I'm getting a lot of interjections from the new leader, so when she's finished interjecting, thank you. The ceasefire that Mr Dutton opposed was supported by...
Thank you, Minister Wong. Senator Ruston, I'm going to ask you to withdraw that comment.
I withdraw.
Thank you. Before I go to Senator Sheldon, I welcome to the public gallery former Senator Bushby. Welcome. Senator Sheldon.
My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Emergency Management, Senator Watt. Now, in recent days, we've seen the effects of ongoing flooding and severe weather on communities across North Queensland. I know many Australians are concerned about the impact this is having on their fellow Queenslanders and fellow Australians. Can the Minister update the Senate on the current situation?
Minister Watt.
Thanks, President, and thanks Senator Sheldon, who I know continues to do good work in his role as the Special Envoy for Disaster Recovery. I think all senators will have seen much of North Queensland having been hit by significant and widespread rainfall in recent days, leading to flooding across an area spanning over 400 kilometres. This has led to many communities being cut off and many more being flooded. And while North Queenslanders are famously tough, this is a big event, and I know that all of our hearts go out to people going through these floods right now. Many have come together to deal with the impact of the floods, and I do want to acknowledge the work of Senator Green over the last couple of weeks. She is actually representing the government at an official event in Queensland today, and I particularly want to acknowledge Minister McAllister, who's been heavily involved at a personal level in the planning and preparation for these floods, and is actually in Townsville today meeting with the Queensland Premier, Queensland and local government officials and emergency management agencies to mobilise federal support. There are currently 5 national helicopters supporting state emergency services in North Queensland, 1 from our national aerial fleet and 4 from the ADF. This is the first time a national aerial asset has been deployed outside of bushfires. In addition, locally based ADF personnel are assisting and have been assisting, and we thank them for their efforts. Our thoughts are with the family and friends of the woman who died in floodwaters in Ingham over the weekend and the rescuers who were with her at the time. And I want to express the government's gratitude, and I think all Australians' gratitude, to our first responders and emergency management personnel, as well as those from industries such as energy and telecommunications, who continue to focus their efforts on supporting these communities. While the rain is easing today, the risk to communities and level of response remains. The situation is constantly evolving, so people should continue to monitor for updates and warnings. We know this is a big flood, and our government will be there to support Queenslanders through it.
The time for answering has expired. Senator Ruston, you made the exact same comment that I asked you to withdraw in relation to Minister Wong. To Minister Watt, could you please withdraw? Please, you made a reflection on his character, so please withdraw.
Look, in the interest of the chamber, I'll withdraw, but could I actually ask, President, if you could provide me with some information as to the comments?
I will, outside of the chamber. As you are well aware, it is my intention, when I ask senators to withdraw, I don't repeat the comments they've made, but I am more than happy to speak to you after question time. Senator Sheldon, first supplementary.
Now, with these floods affecting such a widespread area, I know communities will have a long recovery ahead. How will the Albanese Labor government work to support the communities impacted by this crisis as they recover?
Minister Watts, first supplementary.
Thanks, Senator Sheldon. Supporting these communities in North Queensland is and will remain a priority for the Albanese government. Over the coming days, as local governments commence their damage assessments, we'll get a clearer understanding of the full extent of damage caused by this event. Already, we've activated personal hardship payments for communities on Palm Island, in Hinchinbrook, Cassowary Coast, Burdekin and designated areas of Townsville and Gordon Vale. These support measures include $180 grants for individuals and up to $900 for a family of 5 or more to cover the costs of emergency essentials like food, clothing and medicine. We're also supporting a number of local councils in their clean-up, recovery and response efforts. We know families have been impacted by this disaster and have declared a period of emergency for childcare services in North Queensland. In the Burdekin, Cairns, Palm Island and Townsville regions, extra support is available, including gap fee waivers and additional absences, so families won't have to use their annual allocation of allowable absences. We'll continue to work with the Queensland Government to provide support.
Has expired. Senator Sheldon, second supplementary.
We know Australians are facing increasingly frequent and severe natural disasters. How is the Albanese Labor government working to improve how Australians can prepare, respond to and recover from significant events like the flooding we've seen in North Queensland?
Thank you, Senator Sheldon. Minister Watt.
Thanks, Senator Sheldon. Well, obviously, as well as it being vital that federal governments support state and local governments when disasters hit, we're also working with state and territory governments and authorities, as well as industry and communities, to help Australia better prepare, respond and recover. Ahead of this season, we conducted the largest ever preparedness program across the nation for disasters, bringing together over 2,500 people to get us ready for this summer. We've committed an additional $35 million over 2 years, increasing our aerial capability with a national large air tanker and 3 heavy lift helicopters. And our flagship Disaster Ready Fund has already invested nearly $750 million in joint Commonwealth state funding to over 350 projects around the country. That includes building cyclone shelters, improving drainage systems to better prepare communities against flooding and trialling AI for early fire detection in remote places. We'll keep on preparing because we know there will be more natural disasters and will continue supporting communities to be ready.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Patterson.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. When was the Prime Minister first briefed on the discovery of a caravan in Dural, New South Wales that was packed with explosives allegedly intended to target Sydney's Jewish community?
Thank you, Senator Patterson. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. Senator, in answer to your question, I think the Prime Minister has responded to that on numerous occasions, and I'd refer you to that answer. I know that this investigation is a very important investigation. I know that it is very important that, regardless of people's political positions, that the police be empowered and to do their job, because what we want is all those responsible to be identified, to be apprehended and to face the full force of the law. And the approach we will take to this issue is to observe the appropriate protocols, and we will continue to support the police in the job they are doing. I would say I understand why members of the Jewish community are feeling distressed, are feeling unsafe, given what we have seen. And I hope that the Parliament today, indicating its position together, I hope that the police continuing to pursue those who are responsible will be of some comfort. But the most important thing is for Australians as a community to come together and to say how and to show solidarity with the Jewish community, but also to make clear how unacceptable this sort of hatred is anywhere and certainly on Australian streets.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Patterson, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. The Minister is right. The Prime Minister has addressed it. He just hasn't answered it. When was the first time that a minister in your government was briefed on the Caravan incident?
Thank you, Senator Patterson. Minister Wong.
Well, I again refer to my earlier answer, and I say again to Senator Patterson, I understand why the opposition has tried to keep the political focus on this. I, for one, think the political focus should be on making sure people are apprehended, making sure people face the full force of the law, because the safety of the community is most advanced by ensuring that that is what occurs, and certainly that's the approach the government would take. We don't comment on operational matters regarding national security. You would know we take a mature, considered approach to these matters. We are regularly briefed by national security agencies. We don't think it's helpful for anyone to be undermining the good work of the police by playing politics with this investigation or any investigation.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Patterson, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. Justin Bassey from the Australian Strategic Policy Institute wrote in The Australian on Monday that, quote, operational details cannot be a catch-all excuse to deflect legitimate scrutiny or hide the truth. Why is it that your government is unwilling to disclose when you were briefed on this issue, while the New South Wales Premier has been happy to do so?
Thank you, Senator Patterson. Minister Wong.
We take our advice from national security agencies, not from former Liberal staffers.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Waters.
Thanks very much, President. My question is to Minister McCarthy, representing the Minister for Health. Minister, we know from tax data that 1 in 3 big corporations pays no tax. And when a nurse or a teacher is paying more tax than mega profitable companies like Chevron, you know that something's wrong. If big corporations paid their fair share, we could fund the things we all need, like adding dental care into Medicare. When the Greens were in minority government with Labor in 2010, we got dental for kids added into Medicare. We want to finish the job and make sure that every Australian can see the dentist using their Medicare card, not their credit card. Minister, will the Albanese government tax big corporations and fund bringing dental into Medicare?
Just before I call Senator McCarthy, Senator Waters, that question is predominantly about tax, so it should go to Minister Gallagher, but I am happy to call the Minister and ask her to respond in whatever manner she sees fit in relation to your question. Minister McCarthy.
Thank you, President. Always happy to talk about Medicare, but as you've rightly pointed out, in terms of the tax side of things, Senator Waters, I will refer to Senator Gallagher. When we came to government in 2022, President, it's never been harder or more expensive to find a doctor. And as you know, bulk billing was in freefall after a decade of cuts and neglect to Medicare, and that's why strengthening Medicare was a key focus of our election platform. In just 2 years, we have delivered more doctors, more bulk billing and opened 87 Medicare urgent care clinics. Have you been to any of the urgent care clinics? I'm sure. In fact, I'd be interested to know if anyone opposite has actually been to any of the urgent care clinics.
Minister McCarthy, please resume your seat. Senator Waters.
Just a point of order. I'm asking
Senator Watt. I've got Senator Waters on her feet.
Thanks, President. I'm just specifically asking about dental care.
Well, you will recall that the substantive part of the question was about tax. You did reference Medicare. I've invited the minister to respond, so she is free to respond in that way. Minister, please continue.
Well, thank you, President, and I do appreciate the senator's questions in regards to the dentist, but let's also point out that that is also in reference to Medicare and the use of Medicare, and I think it is important to point out that in November 2021, 6 months before the last election, the financial viability of general practice was in serious trouble after the Coalition's 6-year freeze on Medicare rebates that started when Peter Dutton was Health Minister. $6.1 billion invested to strengthen Medicare in 2023 budget.
Please resume your seat. Senator Ruston.
Point of order. The minister must not mislead the Senate.
Senator Ruston, that's a debating point, and you know that well. Minister McCarthy, please continue.
You said it. This is the old GP tax.
Very sensitive. Very sensitive.
Minister McCarthy. I didn't hear Minister Wong, but I will ask her.
You can't say that. I know you might be trying to.
Thank you, Minister Wong. I will, Senator Ruston. I didn't hear the comment, but in the interests of the chamber, order. I'd ask you to withdraw.
In the interest of the chamber, I withdraw.
Thank you, Senator Ruston. I appreciate that. Order. If there was more order in the chamber, I would hear these things. Minister McCarthy, please continue.
Thank you, President. And just let me finish there, that in the last 2 years we have delivered the 2 largest increases to Medicare rebates in 30 years, and we have increased Medicare rebates by more in just 2 years than the former government did in 9 long years. And now, Senator Waters, our government is working in partnership with states and territories to develop a new national oral health plan for the next 10 years. And this will include goals to improve the oral health status of Australians.
Thank you, Minister.
And
the time
reduce
for answering has expired. Senator Waters, first supplementary.
Yes, thanks, President. It sounds like you didn't really want to talk about dental care there, but in the cost of living crisis that we're all in, last year 2 million Australians couldn't afford to go to the dentist. And last time I checked, the teeth are part of the body, and so dental care should not be considered a luxury. Why is the Albanese government excluding dental care for adults from Medicare?
Thank you, Senator Waters. Minister McCarthy.
Thank you, President. This government is doing everything it can to reduce the cost of living pressures on all Australians, unlike those opposite. Senator Waters, our government is providing $215.6 million over 2 years, from 2023 to 24, to state and territory governments to support public dental services for adults. State and territory governments are responsible for delivering public dental services, including managing waiting lists and determining who is eligible for the services, as well as the types of services provided. We are also continuing to fund the Child Dental Benefit Schedule, CDBS, which has provided $3.1 billion in benefits and delivered 51 million services to 3.5 million children since it commenced in January 2014.
Thank you, Minister. So, second supplementary, Senator Waters.
Thanks, President. Last year, 80,000 people ended up in hospital because they couldn't afford preventative dental care, according to a report released by AIHW. That adds to the pressure on our underfunded hospitals, as well as adding to people's pain. The Greens will keep pushing to add dental into Medicare, not just kick it off to the states and territories. Why won't the Albanese government do that?
Thank you, Senator Waters. Minister McCarthy.
Thank you, President. We certainly support access to private dental services through the private health insurance rebate, which is estimated to provide $7.45 billion in 2024 to 25 and $38.6 billion from 23 to 24 to 27 to 28. We do recognise that private dental services can also be expensive in Australia, and we've set the fees for private dental services, Senator. Private dentists set their own fees for services. Our government supports access to dental care through providing funding to states and territories, and I know you might not agree with that, but that is our process to support access to public dental services. We also support access to the Child Dental Benefit Schedule, as I've already outlined in my answers, and the National Health Reform Agreement, NHRA funding for public hospital, admitted and outpatient services.
Thank you, Minister. Senator O'Neill.
President, my question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. Can the Minister explain how the Albanese Labor government is delivering cost of living relief for all Australians without adding to inflation?
Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. Thank you, Senator O'Neill, for your question. And Labor understands that Australians are under pressure, and that's why the Albanese government has been focused on delivering cost of living relief while bringing down inflation, and we know that there is more to do. Under this government, every single Australian taxpayer has received a tax cut. Under this government, childcare and medicines are cheaper, and we have boosted bulk billing. We've opened 75 free Medicare urgent care clinics across the country, delivered energy bill relief for every household and small business, TAFE we've introduced free TAFE and we've reduced HEX debts. We're expanding paid parental leave to 6 months and adding superannuation to it. And under this government, you've seen increased wages for millions of Australians in aged care, childcare and other industries. And when we came to government, annual inflation had a 6 in front of it and was rising. A 6 in front of it and was rising. Now it has a 2 in front of it and is falling. Now, those opposite, Mr Dutton, Senator Cash and those opposite voted no to every single cost of living measure. What cost of living relief would be on Mr Dutton's chopping block? He's confirmed he wants to make huge cuts that will leave Australians worse off. But he won't tell Australians what they are until after the election. A whopping over $350 billion in secret cuts. And we know that he wants to spend up to $10 billion a year of workers' money on long lunches and billions of dollars forcing nuclear power plants into people's backyards, with the great result that their power prices would go up. Unlike him, we are focused on cost of living relief. Mr Dutton is focused on cuts, conflict and culture wars. Australians would be worse off under Mr Dutton.
The time for answering has expired. Senator O'Neill, first supplementary.
Thank you very much, Senator Wong. And I note that the Albanese Labor government's careful management of the economy has brought inflation down to its lowest level in more than 3 years. Can the minister please inform the Senate how the government will continue to help Australians with cost of living measures?
Minister Wong.
Thank you. Our focus every day is on how we can work to bring costs down and to get wages up and to keep inflation where it should be. Cracking down on dodgy pricing and unfair charges, whether it's online or at the supermarket. Delivering new rights and better bargaining for workers across the country. I'm sure something Senator Cash would be so happy about. Oh, yeah. And if we're re-elected, we will slash student debts by a further 20%. By contrast, those opposite, Mr Dutton, has no positive plan, but he does have a lot of secret cuts. And that's because the Liberals and the Nationals have spent every day saying no to cost of living relief. Every day saying no to cost of living relief. You know, they're arrogant enough to think they got nothing wrong during their wasted decade in government, and they're reckless enough to inflict it on Australia all over again. This isn't a time for cuts, but that's what Mr Dutton would have in store for Australians.
Thank you, Minister. Senator O'Neill, second supplementary.
Thank you, Senator Wong. Now, you've highlighted today tax cuts for every taxpayer, cheaper childcare, cheaper medicines and fee-free TAFE, which are making meaningful differences to families in my state of New South Wales. Can you please outline any risks to the Albanese Labor government's cost of living measures that would leave Australians worse off?
Thank you, Senator O'Neill. Minister Wong.
Well, the biggest risk to household budgets, the national budget, the broader economy and Australia's cost of living relief is Mr Peter Dutton. Whether it's cheaper power bills, cheaper medicines, Medicare urgent care clinics, cheaper childcare, HEX debt help or tax cuts for every taxpayer, Mr Dutton has opposed them all. Mr Dutton has opposed them all. But I tell you, what does he support? He supports tax breaks for bosses' lunches. So opposed to cheaper medicines, Medicare urgent care clinics, opposed to cheaper childcare, opposed to HEX debt help, or opposed to tax cuts for every taxpayer, but supports tax breaks for long lunches.
Order.
Now, this is a plan that could cost the budget up to $10 billion a year, as Treasury costings have revealed. And Mr Dutton is also in favour of cuts, though to what services he won't say. Australians will be worse off under Mr Dutton.
The time for answering has expired. Senator David Pocock.
Thanks, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Communications, Minister McCarthy. Minister, in November 2023, the government announced a review of our online safety laws. On the 1st of November last year, Delia Rickard PSM handed the government her review into online harms. Can the government explain the reasons behind Ms Rickard's recommendation for a digital duty of care?
Thank you, Senator Pocock. Minister McCarthy.
Thank you, President, and I thank Senator Pocock for the question. And if I can just say from the outset that the Albanese government is committed to keeping Australians safe online. This has been an important area, especially for the Minister, Michelle Rowlands, who has done a tremendous job in this role over the last couple of years in terms of this area of legislation. We know that keeping Australians, particularly young Australians, President, safe online is absolutely imperative. As recommended by the review, Senator Pocock, we have already legislated increased penalties for breaches of the Act from less than $1 million to $50 million. We will legislate a digital duty of care to put the onus for protecting Australians on the platforms, and we are engaging, President, with industry and the community to ensure it does meet community expectations. We're certainly working through the remainder of the recommendations to ensure we deliver reforms that protect Australians. The review makes clear the importance of balancing and depoliticising our response to online hate. It recommends attacks against a person's religion or race should be captured, but not ideas, concepts or institutions. And we are determined, President, to get it right. We're determined to get our response right, to prevent the spread of anti-Semitic and homophobic material without impeding free speech in our country.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Pocock, first supplementary.
Thanks, President. Thank you, Minister. Minister, on the 21st of November, Minister Rowland stated in the other place, "Harms don't simply switch off on a child's 16th birthday. That is why the government has taken the decision to bring forward a key recommendation to legislate a digital duty of care." Today there are reports that the government now has no timeline to legislate it. Is the government still bringing it forward as was stated last year, or has the government yet again capitulated to industry pressure?
Thank you, Senator Pocock. Minister McCarthy.
Thank you, President. Well, certainly we are not sitting idle, President. We have legislated increased penalties, as I've referred to in my previous response, and we will legislate a digital duty of care. This is on top of the Albanese government's legislation to put a minimum age on for social media. The AG's legislation criminalising the sharing of deep fakes and our world-leading dating service industry code. We haven't sat still here. We have been working on this from the get-go. We're working through the remainder of the recommendations, as I've said, to ensure we deliver reforms that do protect Australians. The report does not make any recommendations to allow e-safety to remove content overseas. We make laws for Australians, and we're not contemplating changes to the law to allow e-safety to remove content in other countries.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Pocock, second supplementary.
Thanks, President. Thank you, Minister. That certainly doesn't sound like bringing it forward. I take it that there is no timeline anymore. Ms Rickard recommends fines for platforms that breach their duty of care of 5% of their global annual turnover, potentially billions of dollars. Will the government commit to implementing this recommendation in this term of parliament and actually hold social media companies accountable?
Thank you, Senator Pocock. Minister.
President, the Minister is doing exactly that. Her constant communications with those companies, with big business, with telcos, and the fact that she is taking and showing great leadership in this country in terms of the care that's required for our children under the age of 16. So we are definitely embarking on it, and I urge Senator Pocock to also reach out directly to the Minister.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Van.
Thank you, Madam President. My question is to the Minister representing the Treasurer. I think the Minister would agree with me that removing the barriers for individuals to undertake genetic screening is worthwhile to implement as a preventative measure against various diseases, such as heart disease and hereditary breast and ovarian cancer. The Assistant Treasurer has been working on a bill to bring before the Parliament to stop any discrimination against those using such tools. Can you outline if any further steps have been taken on this front, please?
Thank you, Senator Van. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, President, and I thank Senator Van for that question. And it's an important question because, as Senator Van outlines in his preamble to the question, the benefits and opportunities that can come from scientific knowledge and people being able to have genetic risks identified are huge and are only going to continue to grow as medical diagnostics and screening tests continually improve. But there are also some risks that come with greater access to data and knowledge about an individual's health, and that's why the Assistant Treasurer, I think, did announce in September 2024, so September last year, that we would be looking to introduce legislation as soon as possible to make sure that genetic or predictive genetic test results are not able to be used to discriminate in the provision of life insurance underwriting. And so I think this recognises, obviously the benefits that come with health technologies. We know people are having greater access to genetic testing, and it will become increasingly important as technology evolves. But it's also important to provide some protection and to make sure that people will not be discriminated against on the basis of an adverse or genetic test results through their life insurance, and that's the work that's being done now. I'm advised the Assistant Treasurer has been working through some of the technical detail of this work since announcing that decision in September, and soon Treasury will undertake a consultation on the design of the proposed draft legislation.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Van, first supplementary.
Thank you, Minister. Minister, can you update us as to the timing of that consultation, please?
Thank you, Senator Van. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, and I thank Senator Van for the supplementary. Look, the only advice I have before me today, and I'll see if there's anything further I can provide you with outside the chamber, Senator Van, is that soon there will be a consultation process on the design of exposure draft legislation to enact the ban of the use of adverse genetic testing results in life insurance. I'll see if I can narrow that down from soon to something more tangible.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Van, second supplementary.
Thank you, Minister. Without wanting to stretch the point, given the importance that you outlined of this, can Australians be confident that this legislation will come before this parliament?
Thank you, Senator Van. Minister.
Thank you, President. I thank Senator Van for the question. I think, as the advice I have is that we were doing a public consultation or a consultation process on the design of an exposure draft piece of legislation. That would indicate to me it would be difficult to get legislation passed through this parliament before the federal election is due in May, as an exposure draft usually takes some time. But if that's incorrect, I will come back to the chamber. As I understand, there's going to be a consultation process. There's going to be advice going out about the design of the proposed approach to feed into an exposure draft. There are only a short number of weeks left, if February and March, and I don't have the sitting calendar in front of me, but it would seem that if we're to have a proper consultation process on an exposure draft,
the time for
that would
answering
prevent
has
that.
expired. Senator Lambie.
Thank you, Madam President. My question is for the Minister for Foreign Affairs and concerns her appointment of Angus Campbell as Australia's next ambassador to the Kingdom of Belgium and Grand Duchy of Luxembourg, the European Union and NATO. Retired General Campbell was in positions of very senior command, that being the highest position of the Chief of Defence Force, where much of the worst defence abuse and systemic weaponisation of administrative processes took place and took out veterans. He can't claim to be ignorant of what was occurring on his watch, and I'd also remind the minister that Campbell was the CDF when Defence frustrated, refused to pass over documents, refused to do the right things by the operation of the Royal Commission, a fact which is publicly known. Minister, I'd like to know the term of Ambassador Campbell's appointment and his annual salary. It would also be good to know what other benefits he will receive.
Thank you, Senator Lambie. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. Senator Lambie, General Campbell was appointed to the role because he does have the experience and skills to advance Australia's interests in the role, which includes engagement with NATO as well, which is obviously particularly relevant at the moment. What I would say is, in relation to the details you ask for, I will see if I can obtain them before the end of question time, but if I can't, I will make sure that we provide you with those. But my recollection is that the terms of his engagement are as is standard for that particular post.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Lambie, first supplementary.
Thank you, Madam President. Given former General Campbell's responsibility also for billions of dollars of failed projects and waste in defence, mismanagement of ADF discipline issues and failure to achieve recruitment goals, what additional economic, financial and human resources expertise will DFAT employ to ensure our Brussels embassy functions effectively?
Thank you, Senator Lambie. Minister Wong.
Senator Lambie, I don't anticipate there to be any particular changes to our post in Brussels. Obviously, it's a significant post, a substantial post. Whilst not our largest, it is a post with some resources, given both the roles that the mission there play and obviously the engagement with NATO. If I have anything further on that, I will provide that to you, but I don't have any other information I can assist you with.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Lambie, second supplementary.
Thank you. Given the importance of trade relations with the European Union, it's puzzling that you didn't want to appoint a DFAT trade professional to this important post. What measures have you or DFAT taken to manage the damage to Australia's already reputation from appointing as an ambassador who served as commander in Afghanistan while alleged war crimes were apparently taking place?
Thank you, Senator Lambie. Minister Wong.
In relation to that last point, Senator Lambie, you would be aware, because you follow this so closely, that obviously Minister Miles has taken, well, actually a number of ministers have taken action in relation to those allegations and appropriate process in relation to the Brereton report. In relation to the trade issue, it is the case that one of the issues that we would like to progress is obviously the European free trade agreement with the European Union. I think that's been a bipartisan position. Obviously, that hasn't yet been achieved. I would say to you that trade negotiations are not generally undertaken by heads of mission, by ambassadors. They are led by DFAT trade negotiators who do a very fine job.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Walsh.
Thank you. My question is to the Minister representing the Treasurer, Senator Gallagher. Tackling the inflation challenge while supporting Australians with cost of living pressures, including tax cuts for all taxpayers, energy bill relief and cheaper medicines, has been a core focus of the Albanese Labor government since taking office 2.5 years ago. The government's approach is in stark contrast to the Liberals and Nationals who have opposed cost of living measures at every opportunity. Can the Minister please update the Senate on the government's work to fight inflation and how this is strengthening Australia's economy?
Thank you, Senator Walsh. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, President. And I thank Senator Walsh for the question and really welcome a question on cost of living, as it is the most important issue facing every Australian. The Albanese government has been working since being elected to office to turn around the mess that we inherited from those opposite. We have brought inflation to almost a third of what we inherited. I know you don't like hearing this. I know you don't like hearing that living standards were sliding. living standards were going back, inflation was going up, wages were stagnating and people were being left behind. And what we have now is inflation coming down, wages going up and low unemployment, which is a fantastic outcome to keep people in work, earning wages and having those wages grow for the first time in over a decade, because we know that those opposites sought to restrain any wages growth. Nothing made them happier than people not getting a pay rise. Nothing made that lot happier than making sure the working people in this country didn't get a pay rise. It was a key feature of their economic architecture. So we brought inflation down. We've grown jobs by 1.1 million jobs in this term of government. We have delivered surpluses. We have lowered the Liberal debt we inherited by $177 billion, and we have lowered interest payments on that debt by $70 billion. I know they're shouting, President, because they don't want to hear it. They don't want to acknowledge that we have cleaned up the mess that we inherited from them. We have cleaned up the budget. We have improved the debt position. We've lowered the interest costs on that debt. And we have at the same time found room for cost of living help for every Australian.
Senator Walsh, first supplementary.
The Albanese Labor government's economic strategy has seen Australia navigate a narrow path of keeping Australians in jobs while fighting inflation and continuing to provide the cost of living relief that Australians need. Can the minister please outline the benefits of having more Australians in work, earning better wages and keeping more of what they earn?
Thank you, Senator Walsh. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you very much, and I thank and acknowledge the long career that Senator Walsh has had in making sure that workers get fair pay rises and good wages growth, because it's important for the economy. Again, something that those opposite sought to ignore and keep a lid on. Well, we've made substantial progress on inflation. I know those opposite hate hearing that as well. We've got wages growing again. Those opposite hate hearing that. They really hate doing that. In fact, they hate it so much they've already told us what they would do if they got into government. They would make sure that wages growth slowed. We've got unemployment with a 4 in front of it, and we've seen the creation of more than 1 million jobs. Now, there was a time in this country where the opposition and government would acknowledge the importance of work, would acknowledge the importance of people being in work. 1.1 million jobs, never been achieved in one term of government before, and those opposite can't
Thank you,
stand
Minister.
it.
The time for answering has expired. Senator Walsh, second supplementary.
The Albanese Labor government delivered tax cuts, strengthened Medicare, supported older Australians and invested in the energy transition. But the Leader of the Opposition has confirmed he has a plan to deliver $350 billion of secret cuts if elected. Why has the Albanese Labor government taken a different approach?
Order. Order. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, President. Well, we've seen a bit over the summer, haven't we, of what Mr Dutton offers the Australian community. So we know that he's going to break the budget with a $600 billion nuclear reactors dotted around the country. We know he's going to make $350 billion worth of cuts in order to part pay for that nuclear reactors around the country. And in addition to that, apart from cutting Medicare, cutting pensions, cutting Veterans Affairs, cutting the veterans getting access to compensation, he's going to ensure that every employer can take themselves, their family, their friends, their potential clients, their clients of a friend out to lunch and claim that back off every taxpayer in this country. Every taxpayer will be paying their taxes to fund Mr Dutton's long free lunch policy. That is the choice at this election. A crazy scheme that will break the budget.
The time for answering has expired.
Between us who wants to invest in services.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Mackenzie.
My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. The members of the Independent Food Distributors Australia have said the government's energy policy has and continues to increase the price of food.
Ouch.
Minister, if cost of living relief is the Labor Party's policy, why do food distributors say your energy policy is increasing the cost of food for everyday Australians?
Thank you, Senator Mackenzie. Minister Watt. Minister Wong.
Thank you. Can I first make the point to Senator Mackenzie that the policy that she is advocating as the alternative to the policies that this government is putting forward is a policy which would require some $600 billion worth of spend on the budget and will result in more expensive energy. So I just want everyone to be really clear when Senator Mackenzie talks about the costs to consumers, which talks about costs, the increase of the cost pass-through to consumers. She is advocating a policy position which will, in fact, increase energy prices, which would result in a worse position for consumers. Now, I heard Senator Ruston saying, "Why do you want to talk about us?" Well, the point is we are at a point where you are offering yourselves as the alternative government, and you should be held to account for the policies that you are putting forward. You should be held to account for the policies you are putting forward.
Thank you, Minister Wong. Please resume your seat. Senator Mackenzie.
Point of order on direct relevance. It was about the energy policy of the government's impact on food prices.
That's
Nothing
correct.
else.
That was your question, Senator Mackenzie, and there have been a lot of interjections from other opposition senators, which Minister Wong is entitled to address. So, order. I would suggest, rather than me constantly having to call order, that if you want your question answered, stop your senators behind you from interjecting. Minister Wong.
Yeah. The reality is the cheapest form of new energy is renewable. And I know that fact. Senator Ruston is somehow more of an expert than the market. Isn't that amazing? She's more of an expert than the market, more than an expert than those from the energy markets who advise us. She's more of an expert than those who invest. I mean, the reality is
Senator Henderson.
You pursued a set of policies in government which meant no one invested. No one invested. We are cleaning this up. But you're proposing a more expensive policy for the Australian people.
Senator Mackenzie, first supplementary.
Brisbane-based Moco Food Services Chief Executive Mike Pebbody has said, very simply, our customers are paying more and they are then therefore have to charge more to their customers. We used to be a low-cost power country, now we're high. It seems like a crazy destruction of wealth across the Australian population. Minister, why has Labor's energy policies increased Moco Food Services' energy cost by 50% when Labor promised before the last election cheap energy for every Australian household and business?
Senator, order on my right. Minister Wong.
Well, first, it's pretty galling, isn't it, to see someone who voted against energy bill relief for small businesses talking about energy prices. It's amazing, isn't it, that she could actually, Senator Mackenzie could actually come in here and feign support for small business when she actually voted against energy price relief for small businesses. So everyone can remember that Senator Mackenzie is against energy bill relief for Australian businesses and Australian workers. So let's all remember that any time she asks a question about this. Let us also remember that Senator Mackenzie is proposing with Mr Dutton, in order for him to try and get to the Lodge, he wants to put in place a nuclear ban which would require households to pay $1,200 extra. So they want more expensive power and they vote against bill relief. That's the reality.
Has expired. Senator Mackenzie, second supplementary.
Yeah, let's try and get an answer for Damon Vanoutsis of New West Foods in WA, largest independent food distributor in Western Australia, who says his electricity bill has doubled in the past 3 years. Minister, why has New West Foods' energy costs doubled when 3 years ago the Prime Minister told Australians that under an Albanese government energy would be cheaper?
What happened to that? I'm going to wait for order before I call the minister. Minister Wong.
First, this is the coalition that voted against energy price relief of $3 billion for millions of Australians. Second, let's remember their policies and why we are all living with the consequences. And it is true, energy prices are far higher than we would like. And it is a consequence of what you did in government. You failed to invest. You failed to provide certainty. The facts are problematic, aren't they, Senator Mackenzie?
Minister Wong, please resume your seat. Senator Mackenzie.
A point of order, Madam President, on direct relevance again. The minister's filibustering, rather than actually addressing the issue of my 3 questions, is the government's policy impact on energy prices and therefore food costs.
Thank you, Senator Mackenzie. As I said when you rose on a point of order previously, if there are interjections, the minister is entitled to answer those interjections. There was so much disorder in the chamber, I have called a number of senators to order. In fact, at one point during the minister's answer, I called the whole chamber to order. I believe the minister is being relevant. But if you want your question answered, get your coalition senators not to interject. No, it's not a debate. You are not in a debate with me, Senator Mackenzie. Minister Gallagher, did you have a— Minister Gallagher?
Point of order. I was simply going to say that Senator Mackenzie was debating the point of order. There was no point of order.
I've ruled on it. I've indicated. Let's see if we can get your question answered, Senator Mackenzie, but that will require silence. Minister Wong.
It is the case that energy prices are higher than we would like, and that is as a consequence. Of those opposite failing to do what should have been done in government. Your only approach to the energy markets was to hide the massive price increase before an election. That was your response. How cynical! And now you cynically put to Australians that you care about energy prices when you vote against bill relief. I think we all understand what is occurring here.
Thank you, Minister Wong.
Is that 3? I can't see.
I believe that was the 3rd supplementary. Senator Darnaman.
Thank you. My question is to the Minister for Employment and Workplace Relations, Senator Watt. The Albanese Labor government's Secure Jobs, Better Pay changes passed the parliament in December 2022 and were designed to help more Australians into secure, well-paid jobs. Noting the independent review into the Secure Jobs, Better Pay legislation was passed yesterday, what did the review tell us about getting wages moving again, and why are secure jobs and better pay so critical to helping Australians deal with cost of living pressures?
Thank you, Senator Darmanin. Minister Watt.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Senator Darmanin. Well, the Albanese government was elected nearly 3 years ago on a platform to get wages moving again, and we are delivering. And it's great news that the independent interim review into our Secure Jobs Better Pay laws that was released yesterday has found that these laws are already starting to deliver for Australians. I thank Emeritus Professor Mark Bray and Professor Alison Preston for their very thorough interim report, which finds that since our Secure Jobs Better Pay laws were passed, there has been a, quote, remarkable increase in workers covered by collective agreements delivering better pay, and again, quote, that wages and other indicators of workers' economic circumstances are starting to improve. So what they've found is that since our laws were passed, workers' wages are starting to improve. In fact, full-time workers in Australia are now earning, in median terms, an extra $213 a week compared with 3.5 years ago. Real wages have gone up by 4 quarters in a row, the gender pay gap is at a historic low, The unemployment rate remains historically low, and this is all happening while we continue to bring inflation down. Now, we know that things remain tough for many Australians, and the Albanese Labor government will continue working hard to take pressure off Australian families. But this is encouraging news, and it shows that Labor's workplace laws are relieving some of that pressure. Of course, it wasn't always this way, because you might remember that the Coalition deliberately kept Australians' wages low for a decade when they were in government. It was a deliberate design feature of their economic plan. Now, I'm sure you won't be surprised to hear that the review also found that, quote, the economic situation of Australian workers declined from 2012 to 2022. Now, I wonder who was in government over that period of time. Oh, that's right, it was you lot. It was the Coalition who were in power while workers' position declined.
Has expired. Senator Dunham, first supplementary.
Thank you for the update. I note that Mr Dutton and the Liberals and Nationals opposed the Secure Jobs and Better Pay legislation every step of the way. How are the Albanese government's reforms helping Australians with the cost of living, and why is it so important that Australian households earn more and keep more of what they earn?
Senator Dunham, before I call the minister, I remind you when referring to those in the other place, use their correct titles. Minister Watt.
Thank you, Senator Darmanin. Under the Albanese Labor government, inflation is down, wages are up and unemployment remains low. And let's remember, under Mr Dutton and the Coalition, they did everything they possibly could to stop that from happening, including by voting against our workplace laws. Senator Cash, with her usual extreme and reckless approach, said that Labor's Secure Jobs Better Pay laws would close down Australia and take us back to the dark ages. Remember that one, Senator Cash? I can show you the film of you saying it if you'd like to, because we remember it.
To the chair
and funnily enough, I haven't seen Australia go back to the dark ages, and nor did the independent review of our laws. Mr Dutton claimed that our Secure Jobs Better Pay laws were radical, and he was deeply concerned that it was going to result in higher wages. What a terrible thing that would be. Mr Dutton didn't want to see higher wages. Well, our laws are delivering higher wages. That's exactly the way it should be, and you voted against every move we did to make it happen.
Answering has expired. Senator Dunham, second supplementary.
Given the opposition leader and the Liberals and Nationals have committed to making targeted repeals of the Albanese Labor government's workplace relations changes, and Senator Hume has claimed that adding more rights for workers is unreasonable, what are the key barriers to creating jobs and getting wages moving? And why is the Albanese Labor government so committed to delivering well-paid, secure jobs for Australian workers?
Thank you, Senator Dunham. Minister Watt.
Well, thank you, Senator Darmanin. And all the way along that bench over there are the key barriers to creating jobs and getting wages moving again. And as you've mentioned, already Mr Dutton has promised to axe many of our workplace changes, even when the independent review found that they are making a positive difference to Australians. While our government wants to see Australians earn more and keep more of what they earn, we know that the Coalition had an anti-worker agenda when they were in government. They voted against every single one of our changes when they were in opposition. And now, as we have the election approaching, they're promising the same low wages policy that they had last time they were in office. Already they've promised to wind back protections for casual workers, to scrap the right to disconnect, and they've opened the door to weakening unfair dismissal protections and getting rid of our same job, same pay laws. At a time when Australians are doing it tough, Mr Dutton and the Coalition want to make things worse. There is no doubt at all, with the wage cuts from Mr Dutton, you will be worse off under Mr Dutton and the Coalition, and we'll be certainly reminding people about that in the next few months.
Minister Wong.
Thank you. I ask that further questions be placed on notice.
Thank you.
And I have something to add in response to Senator Lambie's question. Would you like me to wait till the Deputy President's in the chair? I was asked by Senator Lambie. I was asked a question by Senator Lambie in relation to the appointment of General Angus Campbell. I'm advised that General Campbell is employed by the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade at Band 3 level. It is usual practice for most heads of mission positions that appointments are for an initial term of 3 years, and I'm advised that this is the case for General Campbell's appointment.